Gerstlauer Amusement Rides is a world-renowned roller coaster manufacturer based out of Munderhausen, Germany. Gerstlauer was founded originally in 1982 and has gone on to build some truly impressive rides and attractions. They are most well known for their Eurofighter and Infinity coaster models, which have small trains capable of sharp, compact maneuvers. This list featuring my top 15 favorite Gerstlauer rides are going to be dominated by the Eurofighter and Infinity coasters. As of now, there are 41 operating Gerstlauer thrill coasters out there, and I have ridden most of the popular ones that exist around the world. But there are still a few exceptions I want you to take note of that I'm fairly confident would have made the list. This doesn't include all of the ones I haven't ridden, but just a few that I think stand out. First is arguably the most iconic Gerstlauer creation, the Smiler at Alton Towers in the UK. This is the world record holder for most inversions on a coaster at 14, which absolutely blows my mind. I simply haven't gotten around to visiting the United Kingdom yet, but one day I hope to experience this demented Gerstlauer Infinity coaster. Another great one is Junker at Powerland in Finland. Like the Smiler, I haven't ridden this one simply because I haven't had the opportunity to visit Finland yet. However, this is a phenomenal Infinity coaster layout. It kind of reminds me of a launched equivalent to Monster at Adventureland, which yes, will be on this list. Next, I'll shout out two Gerstlauer coasters that are currently being built that would also contend to feature on this list. Palindrome at Codaland in Texas is scheduled to open sometime next year and has an impressive layout for its small size. A super steep drop, a stall over a road, a fast-paced roll, and an airtime spike where you'll then repeat the course in the other direction. Lastly, Storm the Dragon Legend at Tusenfryd in Norway is set to open in April for the park's 2023 season. It will become the first Gerstlauer inverted thrill coaster and will offer a short but sweet ride layout. There's an LSM multi-pass launch, 3 separate inversions, and altogether Storm looks like it'll be a terrific addition to Tusenfryd. Now with these mentions out of the way, we shall finally get into my own personal top 15 for Gerstlauer roller coasters I've ridden. Starting things off at number 15 are the Gerstlauer 320 model. This is basically the most standard layout for the Eurofighter. The two I'll be discussing are Adrenaline Peak at Oaks Park in Oregon and Hydrus at Casino Pier in New Jersey. There are also 5 other 320 Plus models which take this layout, throw in an additional helix, but do feature the Gerstlauer over-the-shoulder restraints instead of the lap bar. I think that would take away a bit from rides like Adrenaline Peak and Hydrus because part of the reason they're so great is because they're comfortable and smooth. As far as Eurofighters go, these are the shortest layouts by far, but what they pack in is still fairly impressive. You begin with a vertical lift hill into a beyond vertical 97-degree drop, which is a great way to start off the ride. Gerstlauer is known for their beyond vertical descents, and with just a lap bar, these throw you out of your seat. Then there's 3 solid inversions, all providing their share of hang time before gliding into the brake run. The reason these don't go any higher is due to their short length, but I still really enjoy these two coasters for the strong elements and comfortable restraints. At number 14 is Spongebob Squarepants Rock Bottom Plunge at the Mall of America in Minnesota. This one is a custom-built layout, but still has many similarities to the 15th spot on this list. The main differences are the over-the-shoulder restraints and the inclusion of a mid-course brake run. Other than that, both rides feature the 97-degree beyond vertical drop, a cutback inversion, and a roll. A controversial aspect of Spongebob is many people find this coaster to be rough. Me personally, I don't see it. I thought it was perfectly smooth, albeit a little uncomfortable due to the over-the-shoulder restraints. In the end though, there's one element on this coaster that Adrenaline Peak and Hydrus don't have, and it's basically the sole reason that this coaster ranks just slightly higher. The element takes place right after the initial drop and is a quick speed hill that absolutely tosses you up. If it weren't for this one element, I think I'd swap 15 and 14 around in my rankings, which should give you an idea of how close these were in my list. At number 13 is Mystery Mine at Dollywood in Tennessee. This is one that I've always found to be underrated, though in all fairness, it's likely the tamest Gerstlauer coaster to feature in this video. I think if it weren't for the ride's ending, it would be considered a family coaster. However, because of the ending, it ranks above the 15 and 14 spots. This is essentially a beyond vertical drop of the darkness before a quick double inverting stall into the brake run. It catches you so off guard because everything that happens before this point is not too crazy, but that doesn't mean the rest isn't engaging. Mystery Mine is one of the most themed rides on this list. It is really impressive what they've done to keep it entertaining. So if you happen to be at Dollywood and didn't have this coaster on your radar, definitely change that because it's a surprisingly great ride. At number 12 is our first Gerstlauer coaster outside of the US. This is Gold Rush at Slagharen in the Netherlands. I know many may disagree, but this was my least favorite of the large-scale Gerstlauers that I rode in Europe. Does that mean it isn't a good ride though? Of course not. Gold Rush is just a bit shorter than the others, but still it does pack in some quality stuff. The first thing you may notice about this one is it's got much longer trains than the other coasters we've gone over so far. That's because it's actually an Infinity coaster, the first one in the video. Now not all Infinities are like this, but I'd say a good amount do have the bigger trains. Gold Rush begins with the classic LSM swing launch. I love the hang time you get stalling on the dive loop. Then you shoot up a top hat and go through 2 inversions, maybe a couple airtime moments, and that's the ride. It's pretty short, and in my opinion it isn't as smooth as a lot of the other Gerstlauers, but regardless, it's it's well worth a visit to Slagharen to try this thing out. At number 11, we're heading over to one of my home parks for Hangtime at Knott's Berry Farm. This was the first Gerstlauer coaster to use the holding brake feature, technically classifying it as a dive coaster. In my opinion, I do prefer heading straight into the action, and I don't think the hanging thing does a whole lot for the ride. That said, I love the beyond vertical drop that follows, and I love the ride's few airtime moments. There's a really good one right before the Cobra Roll, which in itself is a very intense element for positive G-forces. The rest of the elements don't really impress me anymore, but when I first rode this coaster I did really like it. Maybe it's because I've ridden it so many times, but I do fail to seek out many hangtime moments, which is odd because this coaster is literally named Hangtime. But anyways, this is a fun ride and a good third place attraction for Knott's Berry Farm. Cracking the top 10 is Daredevil Dive at Six Flags Over Georgia. In my opinion, this ride does not get enough credit in the coaster community. I don't think it's as intense or crazy as some other Gerstlauers, but it is a really zippy ride that tracks glossy smooth and has very comfortable trains. If there's one thing I find odd about Daredevil Dive, it's that I'm not sure why its drop isn't steeper. If you compare this drop to just about any other Eurofighter or Infinity Coaster drop, this one might be one of the least impressive. It's still good, just not great. It's what comes after the drop where I think Daredevil Dive really shines. You've got all these really weird elements that have extremely unconventional shaping. I feel like no one really talks about this thing, so hopefully I can change that a little bit. At number 9 is Daredevil Dive's near clone halfway across the world, Anubis the ride at Plopsaland Japan in Belgium. There's two main differences between the two. First of all, Anubis begins with an ultra intense LSM launch into a top hat. Daredevil Dive instead has a vertical lift hill and drop, as I said. Anubis also has over the shoulder restraints and tracks a little bit rougher than Daredevil Dive, which is perfectly comfortable with lap bar only vehicles. For me, these two things result in me liking the coasters pretty much evenly, but I gave Anubis the edge in this ranking because the launch at the beginning is so insane. Probably one of the most forceful LSM launches I've personally experienced. Number 8 might be one of the more forgotten Gerstlauer Infinity coasters. It is Mystic, located at Walibi-Rhône-Alpes in France. This park is in a region of France that isn't exactly coaster heavy, which is why few coaster enthusiasts make it out to the park. But because my brother and I were traveling in Switzerland and would already be as close as 1 hour away, we decided to make the drive out primarily for this awesome little coaster. This is probably the most similar ride in the world to what Palindrome at Codaland will look like when that opens. It's a smaller ride, but it has that really fun twisted first drop into a really fun top hat, a couple inversions, and then the signature incline spike. This is a crazy moment of hang time and is the most iconic part of the ride by far. I really like how Mystic features a diverse array of forces almost evenly. To me, that's the recipe for a really good coaster, not to mention the smoothness and lap bar restraints of the ride. If Walibi-Rhône-Alpes was never really on your list of parks to visit in Europe, definitely give it a look because Mystic alone makes the trip worthwhile. Number 7 is a fan favorite in the European coaster enthusiast world, Karacho at Tripsdrill in Germany. In my opinion, this is the best ride at this quaint little German amusement park. It has a really well-balanced layout with some really cool surprises. It begins with the quick roll in the darkness, which quite a few Gerstlauer coasters actually feature. Then it's your intense LSM launch into a top hat and a good handful of inversions. My favorite part of the ride is the ending sequence with the dive loop that whips you underground into a corkscrew and then a little airtime pop into the brake run. The most surprising Gerstlauer coaster I've ridden takes the number 6 spot, and that's Lena at Farup Summerland in Denmark. This is a weird one because it isn't categorized as a Eurofighter or an Infinity coaster and is instead simply part of the launch coaster model according to the manufacturer. The only other ride like this is the aforementioned Anubis at Plopsaland. Anyways, Luna might be one of the most underrated launch coasters out there. The LSM launch at the start is incredibly intense, but so is the rest of the ride. I was blown away by the strength of the airtime, with the best moments being the first camelback and various entrances into the mid-course brake run. If I did have one complaint, I think this ride could have been done with just a lap bar, and I'm also not super crazy about the final third of the layout. But literally everything else about Lena caught me by surprise, making it one of my favorite roller coasters in Denmark. Just barely making the top 5 is TMNT Shellraiser at the American Dream Mall in New Jersey. This is virtually identical to Takabisha over at Fuji-Q Highland in Japan, so if you've ridden that one, you can kind of lump this in here as well. Now, a few weeks ago, I probably would have had this coaster a few spots lower on this list, but after a spontaneous visit to Nickelodeon Universe earlier this month, I was reminded by how good this thing is. TMNT Shellraiser is an extremely diverse layout with a stupidly forceful LSM launch and a vertical lift hill and beyond vertical drop, splitting up the two halves. This drop is particularly unique for being the steepest in the world at 121.5 degrees. If that wasn't enough, you have a total of 7 inversions, a holding brake outlooking the New York City skyline, and I think the most impressive part about this ride is how they were able to cram it into an indoor mall. The 141-foot tall lift hill was so big that they had to extend the height of the roof just to accompany it. Last thing I'll mention is there seems to be a common consensus amongst coaster enthusiasts that this ride is rough, but personally I've never found this to be the case. I only wish that the over-the-shoulder restraints were swapped out for lap bars, as it would have made the elements feel so overpowered. At number 4, we head back to Belgium for Fury at Bobbejaanland. This is one of the most recent Gerstlauer Infinity coasters, opening in 2019, and when it opened, it quickly gained notoriety for being the only coaster in the world with a voting feature. Basically, there's two small buttons on the lap bar that count as your vote for what direction you traverse the layout. You'll either get to go forwards or backwards, and I had the opportunity to experience both several times. While forwards is terrific on its own, backwards feels completely out of control. Fury has some pretty unconventional elements and inversions, and many of them have sharp banking leading in and out of them that really catch you off guard when you can't see them coming. My favorite part of the ride is this humongous top hat that provides airtime, whip, laterals, and disorientation when heading backwards. This is an absolutely fantastic standout attraction for this park, and I'm thrilled I got to check it out on our trip to Europe. Number 3 is actually my favorite Gerstlauer coaster in the US. It's Monster at Adventureland in Altoona, Iowa. This was my first truly standout Infinity coaster, and it's easily the most comparable thing we have in the States to a Gerstlauer you'd find in Europe. Maybe that can be credited as the reason I was blown away by Monster. I didn't realize Gerstlauer was even capable of building something this well balanced. It's one of the most purely enjoyable coasters I've had the pleasure of riding because the layout feels so fluid, it's so immaculately smooth, and of course it has just lap bars. One thing I love about Monster is how unique its pacing is. Throughout the layout, it randomly slows and then quickly gains speed again. Now on most rides, this can potentially be seen as a downside, but on Monster, it feels completely natural, and the hang time it provides as a result is superb. Other than literally one random hill in the middle of the ride, there wasn't a single element on Monster I didn't love. This is a classic Gerstlauer build at its finest, and it's highly recommended that you make it out to Des Moines to check it out. Now at number 2 is Flucht von Novgorod at Hansapark in Germany. This is the best Gerstlauer Eurofighter in the world, and I don't even think it's that close. What makes this coaster so good is the fusion between theming and thrills. If you took out all of the immersion and just plopped the layout down on a grass field, I think this coaster would rank considerably lower on this list. But Flucht von Novgorod is so much more than just the layout. It's basically part dark ride. It at least begins as one before you accelerate to 62 miles per hour in 1.4 seconds in complete darkness. This means Flucht von Novgorod has the most intense LSM launch on any ride in the world, the fastest acceleration. After that, you're treated to a handful of airtime moments, turns, and a heartline roll before you stop on what many believe to be the final brake run. It seems like the ride is over, but then a vertical lift hill appears and you realize you are not quite done. You slowly climb to the top and then travel down a 97-degree beyond vertical drop, as well as a handful of quick bank turns in pitch darkness. It is absolutely one of the freakiest things I've ever experienced on a coaster. Oh, and by the way, if Flucht von Novgorod wasn't enough of a reason to visit Hansapark, well, guess what? At the number 1 spot is the Schwarzschannen at Hansapark as well. This isn't just my favorite Gerstlauer coaster, it's my favorite roller coaster in all of Germany and is one of my all-time favorites, period. It's the only ride the manufacturer has built over 200 feet tall, and get this, the entirety of that 200 feet is located on the inside of a medieval tower that was inspired after a fortress in Sweden built in the 1300s. How cool is that? Then once you figure out what happens inside the building, you'll be even more blown away. You climb up a monolithic vertical lift hill, and then when you reach the top, you pause. You watch this quick little pre-show in German, and then you fall all the way back down to the bottom of the lift hill like a drop track. It is absolutely insane. Then once you get back to the top, you have a twisted vertical drop in the darkness, and then a rapid fire blitz of extremely fast, extremely intense, and extremely whippy elements. It feels completely out of control, and it is awesome. Literally the only complaint I have is I do wish the ride was smoother. I don't find it to be rough, but it does shake you around a little bit and can be uncomfortable if you're trying to marathon it. But I guess that's just the price we have to pay for one of the most demented layouts ever conceived in amusement history. Anyways, that's going to do it for my 15 favorite Gerstlauer roller coasters I've had the chance to experience. Let me know which other ones would have made your list, or if you order these any differently. If you enjoyed the list, feel free to give me a like and subscribe to the channel for more content like this in the future. Thank you all so much for watching, and I'll see you very soon. Bye guys.